Hello again and welcome to my channel, Pretty in Pink. Today we're just doing a really quick video. I want to reflect on my first real crochet project. So for those of you who don't know, I learned how to crochet, I believe online when I was like 10 or 11 years old, but using those skills, I'd only ever made like a hat and a scarf in high school, which was years ago, eons ago. So I've never really used my skills for anything. Especially, I haven't used my knitting skills at all. I learned how to knit when I was 7 from my dad. My dad taught me my knit stitch, and I have never knit anything. So I'm excited to knit something. But yeah, so the baby clothes that you guys saw the videos on, my previous videos on, this is my first like real crochet projects, and then I gave it to somebody, a baby. Well, specifically I gave it to their mom and dad, and they're gonna use it with the baby. But either way, I was very proud, very happy. But of course, there's always room for improvement. There's always mistakes that were made. So I just want to reflect on that, talk about how I would change certain things, and hopefully give maybe some tips. I mean, I'm not an expert, goodness, I'm still a beginner, but maybe other beginners like to hear other beginners' experiences. You know what I mean? Like a beginner would like to hear what another beginner went through, maybe. I don't know. First things first, of course, the infamous sweater. Oh my gosh, my heart breaks. No neck! There was no neck on the sweater, oh my gosh. And there were, like the biggest reason obviously is because I made each panel equal the width of the back panel, which I shouldn't have done. I should have made them a little shorter. And then I should have done ribbing around the whole border, including the collar. So that's two things I would change. I would reduce the sizing of the front panels so that there'd be an opening. I'd probably, instead of making the panels like, imagine my whole right here is my back panel. I made the front panels basically equal that. I would make the front panels probably stop here. You know what I'm saying? So that there's an opening for the neck. So that's one big mistake I made. Another one is I realized I didn't put any ribbing on the collar. I wasn't thinking. Obviously, maybe if I was thinking, I would have been like, hey, why don't I have a collar? Oh, I don't have a neck. And then maybe I would have fixed it. So that's another thing. I would have done ribbing on the collar. So the ribbing should have gone like all the way around, wrapped around the collar and come down. So it just looks really cute and concise. Hold on, I wrote some of these down. Oh. Always remember that you have the right amount of yarn that you need for your project. I mean, granted, in my case, the yarn I used for that baby sweater was yarn that was given to me by my father when I was 7 years old. So obviously, I didn't have the capability to go and find that exact yarn again. But for you guys and for myself in the future, always make sure you have enough yarn, because I did at the very end run out of pink yarn when I was sewing the arms together for the sweater. So, and even though it's not super noticeable, it's still noticeable the type of pink yarn I had to end up using. You can still tell, right? So that was unfortunate. I think that's everything for the sweater. For the dress, a lumpy back. You do not want the dress to be lumpy. For the front of the dress, in my opinion, I love it. Super cute, love it. Back of the dress, lumpy. Why is it lumpy? Because I crocheted a piece of fabric and sewed that, or crocheted just like, crocheted a piece of fabric and sewed it into the rest of the dress. That's a horrible idea. I said it in my video, I'm gonna say it again. Horrible idea. I should have just crocheted directly onto the piece that I had if I wanted to extend it and give it more width. Obviously, because it was so lumpy. It ruined the whole thing because I was so proud. Like when you look at the front, it's really pretty. And even the back, it's not horrible, but if you're kind of a perfectionist and you look at that back and you're like, no, that is lumpy. I don't like that. I don't like that they can see where I added the piece. Whatever, I was in a rush, so obviously that's part of the reason why, or else I would have probably just completely frogged it. That's a new term that I learned, frog. I would have completely just frogged it and then just crocheted directly onto the dress. Another thing is flaring. I am still learning about increasing and decreasing. I just kind of use my common sense. I know that increasing means that you're adding more stitches into one stitch like you're crocheting multiple times into one stitch, whereas decreasing is you're skipping a stitch. So at the time though, since I was winging it, and remember the piece of fabric that I used to make that dress was originally gonna be like a bigger sweater for the child, for when the child grows up, and I ended up just like winging it, and I was like, oh wait, this is a tube, we can just make it a dress. That's why I ended up not trying to practice flaring the end of the dress, but if I had more time, if I could go back in time, I would definitely try to flare the dress out instead of just kind of creating those divots and sewing it in. The divots were good for a time crunch, but I would have really liked if that dress went like this. I think that would have been like really cute for the baby. Another thing would be the bow, or the belt, sorry, the belt. The back of the belt, remember how I, if you watched the video, I made it kind of like a triangle because I wanted it to kind of mimic those like ribbons you see on the backs of dresses. It was really frayed at the edges because I didn't finish them off nicely. I was in a rush. So what I would do if I could go back in time and do it again, I would do over stitches and just tuck in all of those, all the ends of the threads so that it doesn't look all kind of wonky. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's what I would do for the dress. Lastly would be the booties. Honestly, the booties, I don't have a lot to complain about. I'm very happy with how the booties came out. I know they're not perfect, but those are my favorite things that I've made for the baby. I think those are the most successful. I think they will be the most used. I just think they're the most lovely. I love the pink booties and the ruffle. The one thing that I will say though is, that I underestimated how much ribbing I would need. You need a lot more ribbing than you think you need, because for the pink sock, or sorry, for the pink booty, I really wanted the ribbing to be a lot and then the ruffles to be at the top, so then you can fold it down and you'll still see that pink ribbing and then the ruffles kind of bordering it. But my ribbing wasn't a lot, so you can't really fold it too much. And in fact, my mother was like, it looks cute how it is, I'm just gonna leave it unfolded. But in my head, I was like, I really wanted it to be folded. But now I know for the next time, put a lot of ribbing, because it just doesn't translate. I was like, oh, this is enough rows of ribbing. But then when I was done with the project, I was like, maybe I could have added more rows of ribbing. And then, I guess another critique I can find for the booties, because I mean, they're not perfect, but I just really like them a lot. The feet aren't exactly the same for each booty. They're not exactly the same, but they're similar enough that it's fine. The reason they're not exactly the same, obviously, is because I was sewing them together. So I didn't sew them exactly perfectly, exactly the same. So the shape of the booty kind of differs between each foot. You can't really tell unless you're being really nitpicky. So I really liked it. And then finally, the biggest mistake that I found out later on that I made, huge mistake according to all the crocheting and knitting forums that I like to lurk. I cut off my ends. I cut off my ends instead of weaving them in. I am sorry, I was in a rush, I was incredibly tired, and honestly, I'll probably still do it again. So I'm letting you guys know now, this is a mistake that I'll probably keep doing unless I have the time. And it's not just to be, I'm not trying to be snarky or anything. I really do think it was silly. Once I saw that on the knitting and crochet forums, I was like, oh, no. I was like, cutting off your ends is bad. Because what I do is I'll tie it like 4 or 5 times in like tight knots, and then I'll cut it not all the way, like I'll leave a little tail. So in my head, I was like, oh, that's secure, especially because I left it with a little tail, but who knows. So maybe one way I could improve also, not maybe, one way I could definitely improve is weaving the ends in. I think it also looks neater and more professional when you weave it in. But sweetheart, I was in a rush. I procrastinated. I guess the biggest mistake I made was procrastinating. That was the biggest mistake I made. I had to make all of those things in 5 days, which was enough time. That was more than enough time. But I procrastinated and didn't end up actually like fully starting to assemble everything until the night before. So that's why you guys see that there's not a lot of footage and things like that. Overall, I'm very happy with what I made. I hope they like it, and even if they don't like it, it's not a big deal because it's a baby. They're not meant to wear it forever. So I guess that's one little tip I also have for other beginner crocheters. Start with baby things. Number one, babies can't hurt your feelings. So if they don't like it, they can't tell you. And two, they grow out of it anyway. They're not meant to wear it for the rest of their life. So it's great. It's just a good thing to practice. Like now that I've made those mistakes on that little sweater, when I finally start, or that little cardigan, when I finally knit or crochet a big cardigan, I'll be like, okay, remember the mistakes you made on the little sweater? Okay, we won't make that again. Or now that I've made those mistakes on that little dress, you know, when I make a big dress, I'm like, okay, remember this dress? All right, let's not make those mistakes again. So I'm really happy that I did that. I do recommend starting off small when you are starting projects. Not only do you not get your feelings hurt, because I read in some knitting and crochet forums, some people get their feelings hurt when people don't want the things that they make. So not only do you not get your feelings hurt, you get to practice on something small so that you learn from those mistakes on something small, and you get a feeling of accomplishment. I felt very accomplished after finally finishing those things, because they were tiny, so they whip up pretty fast. So I felt a lot of accomplishment, and that accomplishment moves you to continue and motivates you to make more. So that's everything I have. That's my reflection. This is way longer than it was supposed to be. I honestly only wanted it to be 5 minutes. It's looking like it's hitting the 12-minute mark. Ew. Sorry you guys if this is a boring video, but I hope this helps some people. So always remember, I'm just gonna reiterate. I'm gonna look at my little list. Make sure you have a neck for your cardigans. Make sure you add ribbing on the collar. Make sure you always have enough yarn to complete your project, enough of the same color yarn. Make sure that if you want to add more width to a body of your project, crochet directly. Do not crochet a little patch and then try to sew it in. It's ugly. Make sure you always do over stitches on things where you see rough edges on the end of something. Do over stitches. That'll kind of cover them up. Learn how to do increases and decreases so you can make flares and things like that, like for your dresses or for anything you're doing. Never underestimate, am I on 7? I have no idea. If I'm holding a 7 and I'm not supposed to, sorry. Never underestimate how much ribbing you're gonna need. You're gonna need a lot of ribbing for your socks. And last but not least, if you have the time, well, not if you have the time, you should try to sew in your ends. Always try to weave in your ends. Always try to weave in your ends. According to the crochet and knitting communities. Always try to weave in your ends. Well, I be doing that for my own personal things. Probably not, because it's me. So, you know, it's one of those things, when you make something for yourself, you don't really care if something goes wrong, but if you make something for someone else, you want it to be perfect. So if I'm making something for someone else, I'm weaving those in, mama. I'm weaving those in. But for myself, maybe, maybe not. You know, maybe, maybe not. Maybe once I get older and I get more mature in this craft, I'll be like, oh no, yeah, always weave it in. So always weave it in, that's the last one. So, oh, and last but not least, which is number 9, it should be, never procrastinate. Do not procrastinate. Do not procrastinate. Give yourself enough time to make everything. Alright, you guys, I hope you guys like this video. If you like this video, please give me a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye!